finally, for the ministers, Jaishankar and Singh, why not condemn Russia's invasion? Wouldn't this best reflect India's foreign policy goals and international standing? And what is the leverage that the Indian government has to persuade Vladimir Putin that the carnage that we are seeing every day simply must not stop, that it's not helping the Ukrainian people, and that it's not helping the Russian people?
So, first of all, thank you for the advice and suggestions in your question. I prefer to do it my way and articulate it my way. Now, as Secretary Blinken has pointed out, we have made a number of statements which outline our position in the UN, in our parliament, and in other forums. And briefly, what those positions state is that we are against the conflict, we are for dialogue and diplomacy, we are for urgent cessation of violence, and we are prepared to contribute in whatever way to these objectives. I noticed you refer to oil purchases. If you are looking at energy purchases from Russia, I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe, which probably we do buy some energy which is necessary for our energy security. But I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon. So you might want to think.
The second aspect that Indian foreign policy is being questioned at this point when it comes to wheat bans and food bans of exports. How does that then correlate? Because we're talking about the global south and the east that is being squeezed by Russia's issues with allowing Ukrainian grains to be exported. But by India doing the same, again, aren't those weakest people in the world being subjected to the same kind of issues from India? Do you see that as supporting Russia, or is it a completely different element that we don't understand in the West, that your perspective is different?
I think answer is B. You don't understand in the West. But it isn't just the West, okay? I don't think people understand because they're not actually tracking the trade. A kind of run on our wheat, a large part of it done by international traders based out of Singapore and I think to some degree maybe Dubai. The result was actually the low-income countries, many of whom were our traditional buyers, like our neighbors, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal. These are our traditional buyers, okay? Interestingly, the Gulf buys regularly from us. I heard Dr. Tedros in the earlier session talk about Yemen. Yemen buys from us. Sudan buys from us, okay? Now, what we saw was the low-income buyers were being squeezed out. The wheat was actually being stocked for being traded. So, in a way, our goodwill was being used for speculation. Mm-hmm. So we had to do something to stop that.
It's all about stopping and curtailing speculation at the end of the day.
That's right. And preventing a diversion to high-income countries with a greater possibility to buy, because what we saw happen with the vaccines, we don't want to see happen with the wheat, which was the rich people got vaccinated and the poor were left to God and
ending our dependence on Russian oil by the end of this year, but we're also looking to achieve a timetable with the G7. We've got a meeting of the G7 later this week. I think it's very important, though, that we respect other countries' decisions about the issues that they face. India is a sovereign nation. I'm not going to tell India what to do. What I've said is, as a member of the UK government that has signed up to the Budapest Memorandum, I feel a strong responsibility on behalf of the United Kingdom to take all the action we can to support the people of Ukraine. But that is not the same as going around telling other countries what to do.
I was just reading a report today that in the month of March, Europe has bought, I think, 15% more oil and gas from Russia than it did the month before. if you look at the major buyers of oil and gas from Russia, I think you'd find most of them are in Europe. We ourselves get the bulk of our energy supplies from the Middle East, about 7.5%, 8% of our oil from the US. In the past, maybe less than 1% from Russia. When oil prices go up, I think it's natural for countries to go out into the market and look for what are good deals for their people. But I am pretty sure if we wait 2 or 3 months and actually look at who are the big buyers of Russian gas and oil.
How do you not conflate the two? I mean, I know the Indian-Russian relationship is strong, but you also have issues with China. How do you then sit back and define Indian foreign policy at this point where the West seems to be quite vociferous in trying to curtail funding for the war in Ukraine, whereas by purchasing this oil for national interest, India is being asked, are you funding this war?
So, look, I mean, I don't want to sound argumentative, but then tell me if buying Russian gas is not funding the war? I mean, why is it's only Indian money and oil coming to India which funds, but it's not gas coming to Europe which funds? I mean, look, somewhere, I mean, let's be a little even-handed out here. And even this, look, the whole narrative that it's gone up 9 times. I mean, it's gone up 9 times from a very low base. And it was a very low base because at that time the markets were more open. Why if countries in Europe and the West and the United States are so concerned, why don't they allow Iranian oil to come into the market? Why don't they allow Venezuelan oil to come into the market? I mean, they've squeezed every other source of oil we have. And then say, okay, guys, you must not go into the market and get the best deal for your people.
Move on with that.
My question, which I hope doesn't sound facile to you, is around the sport of cricket. I speak as an Englishman, and knowing that the region is massively invested in cricket, with Afghanistan and Bangladesh now emerging too. But between India and Pakistan, often the countries stop when the two nations play each other. There's a rivalry for sure. Can this not be a source of a rapprochement, seeing as it touches the two countries at the very deepest level?
Good. But the answer to your question about India-Pakistan cricketing linkages, look, it's very difficult in real life to separate issues. Now, if you see some of the very difficult things which have happened between India and Pakistan, I mean, we had, some years ago an attack, a very major attack on an air base in India. Then, I mean, this year we've had, you had in 2016 an attack on a military camp which killed a lot of people. This year we had a suicide attack which killed a lot of policemen. If the dominant narrative of a relationship is of terrorism, suicide bombings, violence, then you say, okay guys, now tea break, let's go and play cricket. I think that's a very hard narrative to sell to people. So there is, I mean, look, this is a democracy, sentiments of people do matter. The one message I don't want to give is you do terrorism by night and it's business as usual by day. And unfortunately, that's the message I would give if I were to follow this path.
Question.
For Pakistan, it was a country which has really created an entire industry of terrorism to deal with the Kashmir issue. I mean, in my view, it's actually bigger than Kashmir. I think they've created it for India, but let that pass for the moment. Who now see that investment of 70 years undercut if this policy succeeds. Okay, so theirs is, I think, today a reaction of anger, of frustration in many ways, because we've built an entire industry over a long period.
See one of your interviews in Europe when they had questioned that India is buying oil and gas, and you replied them that we buy probably one night worth of oil which Europe is buying. My question to you is, how do you see our relationship, since India has been buying oil from Russia, or how do you see our relationship developing with United States in the near future?
You have to, at this time, oil prices are unreasonably high. Okay? Not only are oil prices high, so are gas prices. A lot of them, lot of traditional suppliers to Asia are also diverting them to Europe, because Europe is buying less oil and gas from Russia, or can buy less gas from Russia. So Europe is also actually buying much more from the Middle East and from other sources who would have supplied India. So it is a situation today where every country will try naturally to get the best deal possible for its citizens, will try to cushion the impact of this high energy prices. And that is exactly what we are doing. Now, we are not doing it in a defensive way. I mean, we have been very open and very honest about our interest. I have a country which has a per capita income of $2,000. These are not people who can afford higher energy prices. It is my obligation, my moral duty to actually ensure that I get them the best deal that I can from the world. And I think once you lay it out very openly and honestly, I think people accept it. They may not always appreciate it, but once you have it is there, and you're not trying to be too clever about it. You actually have laid out your interests in a very direct manner. My sense is that the world accepts that as a kind of reality, and that is what will happen out here. And I can tell you, as someone who deals very intensively with the United States, I do see that not just in the United States, but including in the US, that they know what our position is, and they move on with that.